It's late. You're in bed, phone 6 inches from your face, and somehow you've ended up on a website that sells islands. Actual islands, with prices on them. And you find one. 4 acres, palm trees, water so clear it looks fake, and the number underneath it is $340,000. 340 grand. That's a 2-bedroom condo in Denver. That's a parking spot in Manhattan. And you sit there and you think, wait a second. Is this real? Could I actually do this? I've been in that exact spot. I've had that exact thought. And then I spent about 3 years talking to people who actually pulled the trigger, and I found out what that $340,000 number really is. It's not a price, it's an entry fee. Because here's the thing. Nobody tells you at 1 a.m. on that website. When you buy a house, you're buying a house. When you buy an island, you're buying a small town. And congratulations, you're now the mayor, the water department, the power company, the sanitation crew, the fire department, and the harbor master. All of it, forever. Funded entirely by you. That's what we're doing today. Not the fantasy, the spreadsheet. Let me start with my friend Curtis, because Curtis is the reason I went down this rabbit hole in the first place. Curtis works in commercial real estate in Boston. Smart guy, underwrites deals for a living, knows how to read a rent roll in about 90 seconds. And in 2019, he bought a 4-acre island off the coast of Nova Scotia for $190,000. He called me the day he closed. He was so happy. He said, "I own an island for less than my sister's kitchen renovation." And he was right. He did. 2 years later, he'd spent another $410,000, and there was still no house on it. Not a bad house. No house. Zero house. What he had was a dock, a cleared building pad, a septic field, a well that came up brackish, and a set of engineering drawings. That's the whole lesson in one story. The land is the cheap part. On a mainland lot, land is usually 30 to 50% of your total project cost. On an island, it's frequently under 15%, sometimes under 10. So when you see $340,000, your brain is doing normal real estate math. And normal real estate math does not apply out here. Second question, and this one trips up almost everybody. Do you even own it? Because private island for sale means about 9 different things depending on which flag is flying over it. In the Bahamas, a foreigner can buy freehold. You own the dirt, full stop. Same in Belize. Same in most of Canada and the US Maine. Nova Scotia, Ontario, upstate New York. But go to Fiji or French Polynesia, and a lot of what's on the market is leasehold. 99 years, sometimes less, and at the end of it, the land goes back. Go to the Philippines or Thailand, and a foreigner legally can't own land at all. You're buying into a corporate structure where locals hold the majority, and that structure has to be built correctly or it's worth nothing. Indonesia, you're looking at usage rights, not ownership. And then there's the part that surprises people even in the friendly jurisdictions. You almost never own the water. The seabed usually belongs to the crown or the state. In a lot of places, the beach below the high water mark is public. So you can own 100% of an island and still need a permit to build a dock on it, and still have zero legal right to stop a boat from anchoring 40 feet off your beach and blasting music until 3 a.m. I want you to sit with that. You spent 7 figures on privacy, and you cannot legally enforce it. Okay, let's talk about the part I think is genuinely fascinating, and it's the part that turns this from a real estate video into an infrastructure video. I met a guy named Vernon at a boat show in Fort Lauderdale. Retired Navy, spent 20 years doing shipboard systems. Now he installs off-grid setups on private islands in the Caribbean. And Vernon said something to me that completely rewired how I think about this. He said, "People come to me thinking they bought a vacation home. What they actually bought is a public utility with exactly one customer. Let's go through the stack. Water. There is no pipe. There will never be a pipe. On a limestone island, you might have a freshwater lens, a thin layer of rain that floats on top of the salt water underneath. And if you pump it too hard, you pull salt into it and you've permanently damaged your own water supply. So most people go reverse osmosis. A residential scale desalination unit installed is generally somewhere in the tens of thousands of dollars, and the membranes are consumables. You replace them forever. And RO units hate sitting idle, which is a problem because your island sits idle about 300 days a year. Power, no grid. Running a submarine cable from the mainland can run over $1 million a mile, so almost nobody does it. You go solar plus a serious lithium battery bank, plus a diesel generator as backup, and the diesel isn't optional, because the day you have 5 guests and it rains for a week, that generator is the only thing standing between you and a very awkward evening. Batteries degrade. You are replacing that bank on a cycle. Waste. Septic. On porous rock. Surrounded by the exact water you came here for. Engineered systems. Not a standard tank. Fuel. You now run a fuel depot. Diesel for the generator, diesel or gas for the boats, propane for cooking. It arrives by barge and you store it. And storing thousands of gallons of fuel on a rock is its own permitting conversation. Connectivity. Satellite internet has genuinely changed this equation in the last few years, and it's the single biggest quality of life upgrade in the whole category. But your uptime is still weather dependent. The dock. The most expensive structure on most islands, and the one that fails first, because it's the only thing you own that lives in the ocean full time. Vernon's rule of thumb: before a single wall goes up, budget several $100,000 just to make the island habitable. That's the number that isn't on the listing. Now we build the house. And here's where the math gets genuinely brutal. I had a long conversation with a broker in Nassau. Her name's Elena. She's been selling islands and high-end coastal property in the Bahamas for about 15 years. And she gave me the cleanest heuristic I've heard anywhere. She said, take whatever the island costs. Assume the build costs 3 to 4 times that. And then assume your annual operating cost is somewhere between 6 and 10% of what you built. Why is the build so expensive? Because nothing is where you need it. Every bag of cement, every window, every roof tile, every nail arrives by barge. And a barge run isn't a truck delivery. Depending on distance and what you're moving, you're looking at thousands to tens of thousands of dollars per trip, so you can't just forget something. Forgetting the wrong box of fasteners is a $5,000 mistake. Your labor sleeps on site, which means you build worker housing before you build your house. You feed them. You supply them with fresh water from the desalination system you haven't finished installing yet. Weather stops everything. Not a rainy day, a rainy season. Swell too big means the barge doesn't come. Barge doesn't come means 12 guys sit on a rock getting paid to do nothing. Put it all together, and where a high-end mainland Florida build might run you $600 or $700 a square foot, a remote island build routinely lands north of $1,000, and I've heard credible numbers pushing $1,800. So a modest 4,000 square foot house, not a palace, a nice house, can very easily be a $5 to $7 million project on a piece of land you bought for $340,000. Quick story, because this one's underrated. Trish and her husband Doug, she's a dentist. He sold a logistics business, bought a small K in Belize. Beautiful. They had architects lined up before they even closed. Then they found out they needed an environmental impact assessment. Then they found out that mangroves are protected, and the one flat buildable section of their island was ringed in mangroves. Then they found out that the dock they'd drawn needed a separate approval from a separate authority. 3 years. 3 years from closing to approved plans, paying taxes and maintenance the entire time on an island they couldn't touch. Trish told me the thing that broke her wasn't the money. It was showing up every year to look at her own island and not being allowed to put a shovel in it. Development timelines in these jurisdictions are measured in years, not months. If you're the kind of person who gets frustrated when a contractor is a week late, I'm going to be honest with you, this is not your asset class. Now the ugly part. Insurance in the hurricane belt has repricing violently over the last several years, and the details shift constantly. So check current market conditions rather than taking my numbers as gospel. But the structural issue isn't going anywhere. Wind and named storm deductibles are typically a percentage of insured value, not a flat dollar amount. 2, 5, sometimes more. Do that math on a $6 million rebuild. Your deductible alone can be a few $100,000 before the carrier pays a cent. And carriers have gotten selective about remote, hard to inspect, hard to repair properties. Some island owners end up partially or fully self-insured, not by choice, but because nobody will write the policy at a price that makes sense. My friend Bobby manages properties in the Exumas. He told me about a client whose main house came through a storm basically fine, and whose dock, seawall, solar array, and water system were all destroyed. The house was insurable. The infrastructure was where the loss actually was, and infrastructure is exactly what these policies love to exclude or sublimit. That client spent about 11 months, and a very large number rebuilding the things that make the island usable. Meanwhile, the house sat there, perfect, and completely uninhabitable. Okay, everyone gets here eventually. You've seen the headlines: Necker Island, Musha Cay, 6 figures a night. So let's actually run it, because I did this with my buddy Nate, who runs short-term rental portfolios in Tennessee and Florida and thinks in occupancy rates the way other people think in English. Those famous islands are not real estate businesses. They're brand businesses. You are not renting a house. You're renting a celebrity's name and a fully staffed hospitality operation with a chef, a dive team, and a guest experience director. Strip the brand off, and the nightly rate collapses. A well-built, unbranded private island in the Bahamas or Belize might list somewhere in the several $1,000s a night range. Sounds amazing. Now the reality checks. Occupancy is low. This is a niche within a niche within a niche. 30 to 60 nights a year is a realistic band for a lot of these properties, and that's with real marketing behind it. The season is short. Nobody's booking the Caribbean in September. Your cost of goods is enormous. Every guest stay means staff, boat transfers, provisioning runs, fuel, laundry, and wear-on systems that are expensive to fix. And here's the part Nate flagged immediately. A bad guest on an island isn't a bad review. A bad guest can crack a water maker or foul a generator, and now you're chartering a technician and a parts run from another country? Nate's verdict, and I'm quoting him almost exactly, "You're not going to cash flow this. On a good year, you'll cover your operating costs. That's the win. That's the whole game." That's the honest ceiling for most owners. Rental income makes an island cheaper to own. It does not make it an investment. I ran the structure past Sophia, a CPA I've worked with for years who deals with a lot of real estate clients. And a quick flag. Tax rules in this area change, and this is jurisdiction-specific and fact-specific. What I'm describing is the shape of the conversation, not advice. Talk to your own person. The shape is this. If the island is genuinely a rental business, you're potentially looking at depreciation, at cost segregation to accelerate that depreciation, and at the rules around short-term rentals that can change how those losses are treated. There are participation thresholds you have to actually meet, not just claim. But Sophia's real point was blunter. She said the tax structure is a discount on a cost. It's not a return. Nobody has ever gotten rich by generating deductions. And structuring an island to look like a business means it has to actually operate like one, which means you now have staff, bookings, guests, and a job you didn't want on a property you bought so you could relax. Then there's the local side. Transfer and stamp taxes on high-value property in these jurisdictions can run high single digits on the purchase price alone. Annual real property tax. Import duties on materials, which quietly inflate that build number again. Last piece, and it's the one that separates the fantasy from the asset. Who buys it from you? For a normal house, your buyer pool is thousands of people. For a private island, in a specific region, in a specific price band, your buyer pool might be a few hundred humans on the entire planet. And a meaningful chunk of them already own one. I know a guy, Hal, retired, sold a manufacturing business who listed a developed island in the Caribbean and sat on the market for 4 years. 4. He eventually sold it, and he sold it for less than his all-in cost. And he told me he considered that a good outcome because the alternative was another 4 years of carrying it. Islands are also weirdly hard to comp. There are no comparable sales. Every island is one of one, which sounds romantic until you're trying to get an appraisal or a mortgage, and good luck getting a mortgage at all. Most of these transactions are cash, which shrinks your buyer pool again. Illiquidity is the real cost. Not the water maker, not the insurance, not the barge fees, the fact that you cannot get out quickly, ever, at any price you control, because somebody does. Brokers do. It's a high-ticket, low-volume, high-margin business built on the exact fantasy you and I had at 1 a.m. Developers do the ones who buy a large island, subdivide it, put in shared infrastructure once, and sell 20 lots. That's the trick. The utility stack is a fixed cost. Spread it over one house and it's ruinous. Spread it over 20 and it's a line item. And resorts do, at scale, with enough keys to justify the desalination plant and the staff village and the boat fleet. Notice what all three have in common. They're spreading fixed infrastructure costs across many users. The single-owner private island does the exact opposite. It concentrates the entire cost of running a small town onto one family that shows up 3 weeks a year. So here's where I've landed, and I want to be clear. This isn't me telling you not to do it. A private island is not real estate. Real estate is a claim on land in a place where somebody else already built the infrastructure. Roads, water, power, police, everything. You buy in and you inherit all of it. An island is a claim on land where none of that exists and nobody is coming to build it. So you become the municipality. You fund the water utility, the power plant, the sanitation department, the port authority, and the emergency services for a population of on average 4. That's the whole thing. That's why the numbers look the way they do. You're not overpaying for a house. You're paying out of one household's pocket for services that are normally spread across 10,000 taxpayers. And once you see it that way, the price tag on that listing stops being a price at all. It's an application fee. To apply for the job of running a country with one citizen. Some people look at that math and walk away. And some people look at that math, fully understand it, and buy the island anyway because they were never buying an investment. They were buying a place where nobody can reach them. Both of those are completely rational. Just make sure you know which one you are before the wire goes out. If this kind of teardown is your thing, subscribe. I've done funeral homes, casinos, car washes, private jets, all the businesses nobody explains properly. And drop a comment with whatever you want me to pull apart next, because half these videos exist because somebody asked. I'll see you in the next one.